Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. It is now 6:33 on November 24th, 2020. Welcome to the Select Board meeting of the Town of Walpole. We'll get started as we do with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we will perform this meeting as we have in the past under the authorization of the governor for remote participation for all public boards due to the emergency declaration ordered on March 12th, 2020, and every vote will be taken via a roll call vote. We would welcome all of the FinCom Finance Committee members who are here with us tonight. The first order of business that we're going to go through under appointments is, as I say, a joint meeting with the Finance Committee to go over the OPEB actuarial audit review. So Jim Johnson, if you could just preface that for us a bit, and I see that Mr. Elmore is with us. So Jim, please go ahead.
Sure. Just to give you kind of an overview of when this process started, the last actual meeting I've had outside of Town Hall was with Parker back, I think it was maybe March 9th. It was our first meet and greet up in Burlington. Myself, Marilyn, Lisa, and Jody. And we met Parker, and that was the last time we had an out-of-town hall meeting here. So Parker's been working with myself and Jody, Marilyn before she retired, and now Lisa for a few months on this. We've gone back and forth on a few drafts. So I invited the Finance Committee here tonight because in the past they've shown an interest in this, and we've done it one of two ways. We've done two separate presentations or in one single presentation. I figured we'd just get it done with one single presentation to both boards. That way members of the Finance Committee who can't make it tonight are able to go back and watch this if they want any update. We also are going to make it available and post it on our website under the Finance Department after tonight. So with that, I'd like to kind of hand it off to Parker to run through what his findings were, where he came back with as far as what our liability is at. So Parker, I'll hand it off to you.
All righty. Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. You know, we do quite a few of these meetings, and it's nice to see that your guys' technology is working. I can't say that's always the case, so congrats on that. I will share a screen here. Oh, I guess I can't. I was going to share a screen and share my presentation.
Speaking of technology, I think we can give you that option. Patrick, are you able to give Mr. Elmore the option to share his screen so he can put up the presentation?
Mike, are you there? Are you the host? He is.
Should be all set. Give it a shot.
And now we can share a screen. All righty then. That's of the various screens. Make sure I pick the right one. Hopefully you can see a presentation here.
Yes.
All right, we got the right screen. All right, so let's give you the quick overview. So our firm is, Jim mentioned we met you guys up in Burlington, but I'd worked with Marilyn in the past at a prior place. I'd worked with Lisa in the past at a prior place. And our firm works with about 300 municipal entities across Massachusetts, about 500 across the U.S. We have offices in Connecticut and Nevada. I'm back on the East Coast today. Just got back Sunday, I think, Monday. I don't know. They all blend together. We're in 37 states, Europe, Australia, South America. So I spent a lot of time on planes. GASB 7475, you guys know what this stuff is, so I don't waste your time. So what happened? First valuation, with us, yes, the numbers went up. The reality is your experience was good. Your experience was basically within 1% of what we expected. And then you go, well, if that's the case, then how come my numbers went from 44 million to 51 million? Well, here's the thing. The interest rate changed. And so we took the interest rate from 7.5% down to 6.75%. And I know you'd go, well, I like 7.5%, even 8 would even be better. But the reality is under GASB standards, we really can't support that kind of an interest rate. And beyond that, even PARAC is asking everybody to get down to no less than 7, even on the pension systems. So no more than 7, my apologies. So the reality is expected rates of return have to come down to be more realistic levels. And the way the discount rate is calculated, there's a bunch of factors that go into it, from your expected rate of return from how much money you fund and when, your current level of benefit payments, your current level of assets, and what the municipal bond rate is. So we factor all those things in, you end up at about 6 3/4, which gives you a $51 million liability. Now, the reality is in your guys' case, you're got a $4.6 million of assets, very nice, puts you about 9.5% funded, which we'll see in a couple slides, gets you to basically the top quarter of all the towns in Massachusetts. So you're actually doing something about this. We came up with this EQV measurement about a year ago, just because people always wonder, well, how do I stack up against anybody else? So we wanted to come with some kind of a universal measurement that's equivalent for everybody, because everyone's got a different discount rate. Everybody's got a different number of employees. So try to come up with some way to equalize the numbers, if you will. The expense numbers in the GASB context and the municipal context, they don't mean much, but here they are anyway. Your expense is $4 million and change now. Last year it was $3.2 million and change. But as I tell clients, it's not like you guys are running a P&L and we're going, okay, we kept our liabilities under control, therefore we all get big bonuses. You're not corporate America. It's a different animal. And by the way, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, feel free to chime in at any time with questions. You don't have to wait to the end or raise your hand or whatever. Question at any time. Don't feel shy about that. So you guys are setting some money aside. Very good. Looks like it's increasing a little bit over time, which is nice. The discount rate, as I mentioned, went from 7.5 down to 6 3/4. And here's the thing: the higher discount rate equals lower liabilities and vice versa. That's why everyone always says, give me a higher discount rate. And I'm there, well, the numbers don't support that. I can tell you, I just worked on a case the other day in Tennessee. It's the exact opposite. Their discount rate that we calculated was 6.5, but they wanted to stay at 4% because they wanted a higher liability so they could justify more funding. They're probably 85% funded, but on what we would call the right discount rate, they're 135% funded. But they want to keep pouring money in. So the discount rate, as I mentioned, in that change, going from 7.5 to 6 3/4, increased your liabilities by $4.4 million. Now, here's the thing. It didn't change your costs by a penny. So your $4.4 million goes on the books, absolutely. But the cost of the plan is the benefits you pay out. So I could assume that everybody dies at 65, your liabilities drop dramatically. They're not going to. So eventually those liabilities catch up to you. Or I could assume that everybody doesn't retire until they're 90 years old. Your liabilities will drop dramatically. Again, it's not realistic. So what we're really trying to do in the assumptions is to match up the liabilities properly on the financial statement so we don't have wild swings from year to year. Now, we're always going to have generally much larger swings on OPEB than we do on pension, just because the numbers are much more volatile. The example I give everybody is, when we look at the assumptions over here, you're going to see the healthcare trend. We're assuming healthcare costs go up by 4.5% a year. I will tell you that occasionally that will be correct, but there will be years when they go up by 15 and years when they go down by 5. We get a much wider swing around that assumption, whereas on the pension side, it's all based on pay. So if I assumed a 4% pay increase for the coming year, the reality is it would come in between 3.5 and 4.5, because you guys control what you're paying. You don't control what medical care inflation is. You don't control how much Jimmy or Mary go to the doctor or what drugs they elect to take or how healthy they are. Those things all drive your costs. Some of the other key elements are the election percentage. So that, Mary is eligible to retire, and she does, well, what's the probability she actually takes benefits? She's gonna have to pay something. It's not 100%, but is it 50%, 70, 80? We're using 80, but again, people are going to do what they're going to do. What's the probability they retire? So just because I'm 60 years old and I have 30 years of service, I could retire. Doesn't mean I will. I might stay another year. I might stay 2 years. So we have assumptions for that. The probability I leave employment every year. And again, the discount rate. Here's the offerings you guys have. You have, again, Blue Care product. You have the Network Blue $100 and $500 plans, as well as the Blue Care Elect and the MedX plans. Your plans are fairly average in terms of cost. You're not off the rails being overly generous. Your plans are not incredibly cheap. I mean, they're pretty much, from a cost structure of what I see across the state, especially in your geographic part of the state, your numbers are pretty much about where I'd expect them to be. I mentioned before about funding ratios. Everyone wants to know, how do I compare against everybody else? 77% of our clients are under 10% funded. I mean, you guys are at 9 and change. So you guys, I could say, are basically in the top 1/4%. I mean, 25%, my bad. So again, you guys are doing well. I mean, could you do better? Absolutely. I could say that about almost every single client we have. We have a couple that are near 100%. They tend to be municipal light departments, as you might expect, because they can build things into their rate base. They don't have to raise taxes like you guys do, so they tend to be much more funded. Then the obvious question is, okay, well, what are my peers doing? How do I compare? You'll see discount rates are all over the lot because different people fund very different amounts. Someone like a Millis that's 0.48% funded has a 3% discount rate, whereas Foxborough, that's been very aggressive about funding, has a 7% rate and they're at 28% funded. So, you know, your service cost per employee, which is the value of the benefits being earned during the year. So if Mary works for you for the year, you pay her $40,000. She's earning effectively $1,790 in deferred comp, which will be paid in retirement in the form of medical benefits. So, you know, that number is much lower than our statewide average of $42.96, but our statewide average is a 4.4% discount rate. So that has a lot to do with it. If you look at someone like a Foxborough, they're slightly less than you. They have a slightly higher discount rate. You're pretty much right on their number. Medway's a little bit better off than you are. You're, you know, somewhat better off than Canton is. So again, you're in pretty good shape in that regard. Funded ratio, as you can see, our statewide average is 8 and change, but the median is much lower than 8. So that's an average, but the median is much closer to a 4 or a 5. As I mentioned, municipal light departments really drive that number up. That EQV number, like I mentioned, you know, a comparison that you can kind of compare everybody against. You're at 0.98%. The statewide average is 1.8. Again, so you know you're a little bit worse off than Foxborough, a little bit better off than Medway. So again, to give you some kind of a comparison. Again, levy limit, you're at 64%. The average across the state's 108% of the levy limit for your net OPEB liability. So again, you guys are in pretty good shape. You guys are actually taking steps to address the issue, which is great. You know, can you do more? As I said, absolutely. You know, your benefit payments per retired, 5,300 and change. Our statewide average is 5,377. So you're pretty much right on the average across the state. So again, nothing out of the ordinary there. Sometimes people want to see that service cost I mentioned, you know, how much a person earns per year in terms of these benefits is $1,790, but it varies by department. Now, I will tell you, when you get down to these smaller departments like DPW with 2 people, yeah, it's $780. What that tells me is, without even looking at their census, their population is younger than the average and or they have lower service. The same thing with sewer. You know, police and fire always have the highest service cost because they tend to have shorter working careers because they can retire earlier. And when they do so, they get the benefits over a longer period of time. So that's not unusual. That's to be expected. The all-important cash flows. When is this monkey going to get off our back? So you guys are dropping at about $750,000 a year, which is great. Your pension system, in theory, will be fully funded in 2029. With days like today, you get a lot closer. You know, if you go back to March, you get a lot further away. How that's going to be over the next 10 years, I have no earthly idea. But the theory is you guys will be fully funded in 2029. When that happens, the idea is you would take the money that gets freed up, in this case about $5.4 million in 2029, and deploy that over to OPEB. When you do that, you then become fully funded on the OPEB side by 2039. Now, again, if the markets continue to do well, you get there earlier. Pension system gets there earlier, you get there earlier over here too. Now, again, the one thing I can assure you is that we are wrong. And what I mean by that is, I do not know when every single person is going to die. I do not know when every single person is going to terminate employment or retire, nor do I know for sure exactly how much money Blue Cross is going to charge you every year for the next 100 years. We make our best estimates as of today. And as I tell people, the cone of uncertainty shrinks as we get closer, you know, to the maturity date. So as we get out closer to 2029 or 2039, I'll feel a lot more confident about you getting there on that date. Today, a lot of things can happen between now and then. We've got 20 years. But based on what we know today, yeah, I think that's a reasonable estimate of when you will get there. But again, a lot of things can happen. So it does require that you stay diligent and continue to manage and continue to pour money in. in good times and in bad, because I know you go, well, you know, the market's down, I don't want to put money in. Oh, the market's up, I want to roll in all kinds of money. It's just disciplined dollar cost averaging. You pour the money in every year. Some years you win, some years you lose. And your investment consultant can certainly tell you more about that. And we don't want to, you know, step on their toes. But I mean, that's really the argument here. It's a disciplined strategy. And if you do that, you get there. It's nothing, as much as I would love to say it's a really complicated thing, it's discipline. It's really not that complicated. And that's really all I got I'm happy to get into details about the report, the presentation, general OPEB questions. Any of you trying to take actuarial exams, you want to talk about stuff, anything you guys want to do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Elmore. I appreciate that. And it's an excellent primer for anybody who's watching at home who has no idea about this stuff. It's very helpful. So I guess I would turn it over to Jim Johnson, to you first, if you had any additional comments that you wanted to make. And then we would open it up. I know, as I said, we had some FinCom members here and then also the board. So please, Jim, why don't you start us off if you have anything to add?
No, I guess the only thing I would add is that, you know, this year obviously was a different kind of year. And when Parker and I met and we talked over Zoom calls and we talked to our financial advisors, this is one of those types of years that, you know, we think it's an outlier. We know that obviously this year we haven't been able to contribute as much as we would have liked because of the cuts and the unknowns, but I'm hoping this year can just be out there. We're able to get back on track as far as what we're funding through the money that's budgeted with the policy that you guys recently accepted and through free cash. And I know Finance Committee was supportive of putting some money from free cash into that account again in the spring if we don't need it to assist in balancing the budget. We've already gone forward and implemented a couple of things Parker's suggested. One of the programs we're working on is finding which of there's about 14 employees who are currently on a Medicare plan that's costing us some money. And one of the recommendations was to get those folks off there. We're working with Maya through Blue Cross Blue Shield to get those folks off there. And when we set the health insurance budget, I can dig down a little bit deeper with FinCom come probably February and March when we finalize everything and get the numbers from them. So we're trying to make, you know, you guys accepted the policy a couple of weeks ago. So we're trying to get there each and every year. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Ben.
Just one quick thing I would say real quick to Jim's comment there. So those retirees that are on active plans, I'm doing a presentation for the MCTA on Monday for anybody who wants to get in. I think there's scalping tickets. Actuaries are a popular thing. But no, I mean, so a 65-year-old retiree that is on your active plan, their liability for the rest of their life is about $475,000. If they're on Medicare, it's about $75,000. So as I explained to Jim and the team, Medicare wants to pay about 80% of the cost, and you guys are going, nah, we're good, we got it. And a lot of towns have this, and the problem is because you had some teachers who never paid in the Medicare or some other employees who never paid in, and so therefore they can't get in. The idea that Jim and the Maya team are working with is you can go to CMS and basically buy them into Medicare. And you have to write a check, absolutely, but you're not writing a $400,000 check. So it's a very, you get to buy at a serious discount. And so we recommend really everybody to look at it and talk to your healthcare consultant. So again, it's really up to you guys what to do, but I think you guys doing that, I think is very, very good policy. It'll save you guys over time. And it'll also, as I tell people, listen, the Medicare supplement plan is a better plan for the retiree because it's integrated hand in glove with Medicare. Your active plan is not. So it actually saves you guys a lot of money and actually puts the retiree in a better plan. So everybody wins.
And just to add on that, it is costing us money, but to offset the cost, Maya has agreed to, if we do this going into the next fiscal year, they'll give us whatever our rate is, whether it be, you know, right now they're projecting 6% on a conservative number. They'll give us a 2% discount right off the bat. And that's a deal we made with them. So there's incentive there. So there's going to be a cost savings to us this coming year from that. So I'll hand it back to you, Ben.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Mr. Elmore. Just via a show of a hand, if anybody has any other questions, whether FinCom or from the board, please indicate it now. Yes, Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And Parker, thanks for being here tonight. It's always good to get reminded about how this all works.
Yep.
It also confirms to me that we are and have been for some time doing the right thing here.
Yep.
In terms of allocating funds above and beyond toward OPEB. And when we first started doing this, 2039 felt like a long way away. It still kind of does, but it's a lot closer than when we first started. And it will come. And so there will be a day when all this effort that we've put in over the last several years will pay off. But of course, your point on being disciplined is critical. This was a tough year. Maybe next year is going to be a tough year too because of what happens to state revenues. That said, we've got to be as disciplined as we can and as quickly as possible get back on track with what we've been doing because it is going to pay off big time. So very pleased with the update you just gave us, and I appreciate that. Jim, I also just want to comment on that Medicare point. That is a crucial thing for us to go and do. And glad to hear that we're moving ahead with that because that's a big opportunity for us. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Jim Johnson, we had a comment. Mark Sullivan asked a question in the chat. He said, how comfortable is the town that our pension fund will be fully funded in 2029? And there was one slide I know Mr. Elmore showed there with the possibility that the town may be fully funded. There it is. Jim, maybe you could start off and comment on that.
So I actually just started typing a response to Mark. So right now they tell me they're still on track. We recently got a preliminary assessment from them for the next fiscal year. It's about $400,000 more. And I was just looking at that a little while ago. It's about, I think it goes from, it's a 7% increase. So they're saying that if they keep this 7% increase year over year, they're still comfortable with the funding in place. I spoke to Kathleen last week.
Yeah, my only comment on that is I say to every single town, my concern about the 2029 is not the 2029 as much as it's the 7% you just spoke about. Because eventually municipal budgets are going to break and they're going to go, guys, we can't do this anymore. So my expectation is they will cut the 7% down and extend the term simply because there's just only so many dollars to go around. I mean, we'll see how that plays out, but I just feel like we're going to hit a breaking point soon enough where municipalities are going to say, guys, we just can't do this, but we'll see how that plays out.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other, again, via show of hands or in the chat, anybody have any other questions or comments? Mr. Elmore or Jim?
So Ben, just on my end, I sent this out to members of the Finance Committee. I'll make sure that it's available online. Obviously, we'll refer back to it a lot. It's been great to work with Parker and his team there. They've been very straightforward. Initially, when he came in, he said, my numbers are going to be higher than your last person was. And I said, well, why? And he went through it and explained it just as he did today. And I was more comfortable with it after he walked us through it.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I tell it to everybody going in, certain things, I tell you in front of those guys, I know the numbers are going to be higher, but I'm comfortable they're right, and I'm comfortable the auditor is going to be happy. And like I said, the Monday webinar we're doing with Standard & Poor's and the MCTA, the rating agencies are a lot happier if you use more realistic numbers. So ultimately, you're not skating anything by playing an assumption game. They're bright enough on the rating agency side to see what's going on. So you're better off just being upfront and clean about things, and they appreciate that too. So I think it's ultimately to your benefit to do things that way.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to everyone from Finance Committee who joined us tonight. I know it's more efficient for us to get everyone together like this and hear the presentation and be able to ask questions. As Jim Johnson alluded to, please, if anyone listening at home has questions on this or any other FinCom members who weren't able to join us tonight have questions, please do reach out to myself or Jim Johnson. And we have all the information at hand. So thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Elmore, for joining us tonight.
Hey, thank you. If you guys need more, you got my number. Just reach out. I'll get you whatever I can. Thank you.
Will do.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Ben, I know we're running a little bit ahead of time. I know Carl is on here. I think he's towards the end. His is a pretty simple request, if you don't mind getting to that one. I'll see where it is.
Let's see. Oh, the McMahon, is that the McMahon Associates?
Yeah, that's for the Washington and Poly.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so let's skip down then. We're running a little ahead of schedule here on the quarterly updates for Chief Carmichael and Chief Bailey. So we're going to skip down. I know that there's going to be a couple other select board members joining us here as well in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and take care of a few items under new business. The second item under new business is a vote to award McMahon Associates contract the traffic signal design at Washington Street, Short Street, and Poly Lane intersection, which I know we're all very familiar with. And we have Carl with us tonight. Carl, please go ahead, and if you could just update us. We all saw your letter, but thank you.
Good evening to the chair and members of the board. Carl Baldoff, town engineer with the Department of Public Works. And I did provide correspondence dated November 19th to the board outlining our decision and what McMahon is going to be doing for us. And in short, they're going to do a soup to nuts design and bid and get us out to bid and get a contract under award and into construction with this contract. So we've outlined the steps in there, the survey, the preliminary design, the traffic signal design, the final design, the bidding, all the steps. So we're just informing the board and asking you to, to support this choice. McMahon has done design work in town. They've done 2 jobs in Coney Street, and they responded. They'd already done a short study on this for us earlier and done some warrant analysis and some other looks at it. So they were already into it, and they're quite familiar, and they've been working in town. So we're pleased to have them do this work, and we're asking for the board's support on this.
Great, thank you, Carl, and thank you as always. Everything's very much in order and very well communicated, clearly communicated. So thank you for your work on that. We've seen McMahon Associates here at the board before. I've seen them professionally around the state. So I think that all sounds very good. Jim Johnson, did you have anything else to add here?
No, the only thing I would add is that we're going to focus in on doing this Washington Shore and Poly intersection study first. I know there was 2 appropriations under this item, each for $90,000. The second being the downtown area traffic study, design and improvements. We're going to postpone that downtown traffic study improvements as long as possible until the concern is we do a big traffic study for downtown, and the traffic just isn't there to support the study. Whenever we go in to implement the work a few years from now. So our primary focus is going to be this Washington Short and Poly. It's been on the police department's radar for a very long time. It's I think either the first or second most dangerous intersection in town. The plan is to hopefully get this all designed and ready to bid out in time for the next town meeting in the fall, and hopefully have some numbers there. And next spring in 2022, maybe start the work. That's the aggressive timeline right now. So I'm happy that Carl's on this and we're ready to go so soon after town meeting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for the background on the financing there too, Jim. That's very helpful. And certainly I agree. And we've talked about the downtown traffic improvement study being postponed. I think that's a reasonable thing to do at this point. So at this point, I'd open it up to the select board members that are here. If anybody has additional comment and or questions for Carl or Jim.
I just have one item.
Yes, David, please.
So when does the construction begin on Route 1A north of town with the state?
Carl, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that their timeline is to come back in the spring and start full steam ahead, right, Carl?
That's correct, Jim.
And how is that going to affect your downtown traffic? Are people going to avoid? There might have to be some consideration there as far as whether or not the study might, I don't know. Yeah, it's just an interest. interesting problem. How long is that going to take, and does that put your downtown study way off?
Carl, I'll let you, what's your thoughts on that?
Please, Carl, yeah.
With the Route 1A, the Route 1A is a very long phase project. It could go out as long as 5 years. So obviously it's going to have an impact on traffic getting through, but some of this, as we've discussed earlier, but for the benefit of everyone, some of that work is going to occur at night. And if we had gone forward with the downtown traffic study, we were going to be trying to use numbers that were pre-COVID anyway. So that's not to say we wouldn't take a look as it's set today or 5 months from now or 2 months from now. But we would have researched and used resources to find traffic counts from before this, because that's when the deficiencies downtown, I think, were most obvious. But if we're not going to go forward with it, then the Route 1A project is going to go one way or the other. That's been bid by DOT. We haven't had any recent updates, but as far as I know, through all this, that's on schedule to go.
That's good. Did you discuss this already? Is that why people are giggling?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. No, I mean, it's a fair question. I think there's a lot up in the air as far as traffic downtown, both through the 1A work, as you point out, David, correctly, and some of these other items, the pandemic being not least among them. So it'll be something that we'll have to take into account when we do go forward with that.
All right.
Anyone else? Board members?
And I would just say I'm in favor of this. I think that's a really bad intersection. And I appreciate, Carl, you pushing that forward. I know the chief is very interested in getting something done at that intersection. And if nobody else has any comments, I'll make a motion. Motion to award McMahon Associates a contract for a traffic signal design at Washington Street, Short Street, and the Polly Lane intersection.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. David Salvatore?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim O'Neill?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. 4-0-0. Motion passes.
Thank you.
again, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Yeah, and I must concur. I'm very pleased to be going forward with this project. It really is. It surely is needed. So I really support the chief pushing this, and they're actually going to be on the ground hopefully Monday doing survey work.
Great.
Thanks, Carl. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
All right, and we have a couple more minutes here before we jump into the rest of our agenda. So we'll move forward with a couple of these resignations. Item number 4 under new business is a vote to accept the resignation of Liz Barrows from the Housing Partnership Committee. Being a member of the Housing Partnership Committee myself, we had a meeting just last week, and Ms. Barrows had notified us as well that she was going to be resigning just due to time constraints and what she needs to focus on right now. But I would like to take the opportunity to thank Liz for the time that she put into the Housing Partnership Committee. You know, she has just a ton of experience as a resident and as somebody who has a lot of knowledge and experience in dealing with 40B construction, looking at increasing affordable homes. She was really an asset to that committee, and I appreciate her work in that regard. So thank you, Liz, for all the time and effort you put into the Housing Partnership Committee over the last few years, and certainly we'll miss your perspective in that vein. If there's any further discussion, I'd hear a motion.
Sure. I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Liz Barrows from the Housing Partnership Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. 4-0-0. The motion passes. We'll move to the Ponds Management Committee, which is item 3 under new business. We have another individual who has tendered their resignation, Paul Stelmash. And I would say that I hadn't had the opportunity to work with Mr. Stelmash on the Ponds Committee, but I thank him for his volunteering for the town and all the work that he's put into management of the ponds in the town so far. If there's any further comment from the board, we would hear a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Paul Stelmash from the Ponds Management Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. 4-0-0. The motion passes. Aoife, were we expecting Daniel Ryan or Laura Garrity on the meeting tonight? Do you know? Or Jim?
No, neither of them are going to be on.
Neither of them? Okay, that's fine. So we'll proceed with, I'd hear a motion to appoint either of them to the Ponds Committee.
Hey, Ben, can I ask a quick question? Do we have one opening for a voting member or two?
There's multiple openings.
There are? Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So let me make a motion to appoint Dan Ryan to the Ponds Management Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben? Aye. 4-0-0. Welcome, Mr. Ryan, to the Ponds Committee.
I'll make a motion to appoint Laura Garrity to the Ponds Management Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben? 4-0. Aye. 4-0-0. The motion passes. So thank you to Mr. Ryan and Ms. Garrity for volunteering on the Ponds Committee and putting their name in the hat there to take part in what the town has going on at the ponds. So we'll move on. Let's see. To the Adams Farm requests, which is item number 7 under new business. And we have a couple of votes there, which I would hear a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the request of Yvette Morel to use Adams Farm on May 22nd, June 19th, August 14th, and September 11th from 9 a.m. till noon for a free nature talk walk, subject to them complying with any COVID-19 protocols that are in place at the time of the event.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben? Aye. The motion passes 4-0-0.
I'll make a motion to approve request of Yvette Morel to use Adams Farm on July 17th from 6 to 9 p.m. for a free evening nature talk walk, subject to them complying with any COVID-19 protocols that are in place at the time of the event.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Proceed with the roll call vote, being that there is no further discussion. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. 4-0-0. The motion passes. Thank you, Mark.
And I know the Texas Roadhouse was not planning on coming in. It's a standard thing they do every year. Ethan went back and looked at it.
Okay, so that's for, I see. All right,
Item
it's not a new item, I see. All right, so under new business, under item 6, we have a request for change of officers, directors for Texas Roadhouse Holdings. This is not a brand new application. It is just a change in the listing. So we've seen the packets, everything's in there. Jim and Aoife, everything seems to be in order there for you.
Yeah,
Yes.
everything's good on this end. The ABCC review these because it's such a bulk application that comes in because it's through multiple towns. So it's just something that needs to be voted on by the board.
Very good,
And so
thank
I'll
you.
make a motion to approve the request for change of officers, directors for Texas Roadhouse Holdings, LLC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll proceed with a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. Motion passes 4-0-0. Excuse me. All right, so let's move forward to item number 5. Jim Johnson, we had talked about having an update on the South Walpole Community Athletic Complex, given that we have a couple minutes here until the Chiefs join us. Why don't you go ahead and give us an update, and we can have a short discussion if need be.
So the project is nearing completion. Project closeout punch list is actually being developed this week. It was supposed to happen yesterday. With the rain, we put it off to tomorrow. We're approaching a significant milestone this month with the handover of the synthetic turf fields in the front parking area to the town for our use after the Thanksgiving holiday. The turf field and the surrounding landscape areas have seen significant improvements, and grass has been growing in there. Basically turned off all the irrigation now because of the freeze. Minor areas of the perimeter landscaping remain to be established and will continue to be completed over the next upcoming weeks. We are going to tweak some of the catch basins, the water detention basins, working with Carl and Landis and Weston and Sampson to try to add some more capacity to that one. The course layer of asphalt throughout the main entrance, that's been laid down, that's been placed. The field lighting area was commissioned on October 20th. Rad Sports, they continue to finish the rear parking lot areas for the installation of the concrete benches and picnic table pads throughout the complex, and the dumpster enclosure over the next coming weeks. Again, this is all weather dependent. We're working with Rad to secure the surrounding areas in the natural turf to allow for safe use, but we're also going to put up some fencing there from the temporary fence that we kept from the Council on Aging a few years ago to ensure that cars can't get past a certain point, and neither can spectators, because we just don't want to have them going into an active construction site, and we don't want them on the grass quite yet. The RAD is going to come back in the spring to oversee and ensure that the successful grow with some of the grass turf areas. There'll be some finishing touches that they'll need to do in the spring too. I'm pleased to report that Walpole Youth Soccer has already come forward and asked to book the field starting this weekend and going up. I think it's until December 17th or 19th. They want to run some weekend programs with just in-town kids, basically some pickup games. So they've reserved that through Brendan in the Recreation Department. So I'll take any questions you might have. I know Carl's on here still. Each week we have a construction meeting out there on Thursday mornings where all of us attend. And I'm really impressed with Rad and Weston and Sampson, the way they've kind of approached this project, and they've done a great job.
Great. Thank you, Jim. That's a really comprehensive update. And for anybody that's been out there, it really does look fantastic. And I agree that with the fencing and the other impediments around the grass fields, they look beautiful, and they look like you could roll a ball out on them right now. But best to let it get a full growing season under its belt there. But with the lights and everything, it really does look great. So thank you to Carl and to you and to Patrick Shield as well. I know had a lot of oversight over that project. So looking forward to get out there, get the soccer kids out there, and then hopefully in the spring as well with lacrosse and everybody else, it'll be easier to manage. Any other comments or questions from the board for Jim on the athletic complex construction? Please, Jim O'Neill.
Yeah, just a comment, well, and also a question, but I went up there on Sunday morning. Of course, it's fenced off, so you can't actually get in there, but you can pull in, and it really was impressive. You know, as I sat there and looked at what's been built up there, it's an amazing accomplishment for the town. And Jim, I am just thrilled to hear that we're going to have people playing soccer on those artificial turf fields, perhaps as soon as this weekend, which is just awesome to see them getting that use. And that's just the first step in many of a lot of use that's going to happen up there over the years. My question is, could you talk a little bit about the grass fields and what will happen? So we're in the fall, the grass has started to grow. It looks good, but we know it has a long way to go. During the winter, there's probably going to be winter kill and things like that. What will happen in the spring with respect to any reseeding that might need to happen on the fields?
So Rad owns it. They own overseeding in the spring. we expect that there'll probably be some die-off. So they're going to come back and do what needs to get done to make sure that we have the necessary seeding and fertilizer down there. And we're also not going to open up those grass fields in the spring. I know the Parks Department would like to take it to next fall, but I want to see, we all agree, let's see how it grows in over the spring and the summer. So basically we're going to be very protective and make sure that the grass is established there before we allow play.
Makes sense. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hi Nancy. How are you? Go ahead. I saw you had your hand raised there.
Okay, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Sorry for joining late. Got home from work and have to sanitize from work. Anyway, but I want to say it's amazing up there. I've been up to the fields a few times, and it is so gorgeous. It is like, I mean, I know everybody wasn't happy about spending the money, but in the end, I think that so many families for so many years are going to get such use out of it, and I think every age group is going to get use out of it. And, you know, all the people that went out on a limb and had faith and put hard work into it. Thank you. Jim, you guys are just doing such a great job. It's going to be amazing because we're going to come out of this, everybody's shelter in place at home. And then all of a sudden, like, holy cow, how did that happen? And it's going to be one really, really nice little spot for everyone to be in. So that's just it. But thank you, everybody, and all your hard work.
Thank you.
Ben, I would just jump in as well. I think it's, you know, in this time of COVID, I know there's a lot of kids who are not going to be playing indoor sports this winter. And, you know, at least until the snow comes, I think it's great that, I know soccer's the first group to plan to use it, but I think it's great that other sports as well can book time through the rec department and get some kids out on those fields in the fresh air, you know, separated apart, you know, during COVID. And I'm sure the same thing will happen early in the spring. As soon as the snow is melted, you know, groups will be wanting to get out there and get the kids out for some fresh air. So I think it's a great thing. And I think a lot of people are going to get some use out of it this fall and hopefully through part of the winter.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? All right, very good. All right, well, let's see here. So we have the last four items here we're going to be waiting on some people to join up with the Zoom here. Jim, if you wouldn't mind just reaching out to the chiefs and making sure that they're
Texting him now.
I saw you looking down at your phone, so I thought as much.
Yeah.
Let's Jim Johnson, if it's okay with you, how about we move on to item 1 under new business? I see that Miss Kara Goodman is here with us right now. We could move on to the discussion of the vehicle policy and the Green Communities application, if that's okay by you.
That's fine with me. I'm just going to put you on mute. Do you mind giving an intro, Ben, while I call?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. And Kara, are you there? Are you connected as well? I see her online. Ah, there she is. All right, perfect. Okay, perfect. So what we have here, I know there was a lot of information to the board here and to anyone who's watching at home. You know, we're underway with the application to the Green Communities program here at the state. And so there's 5 criteria that are required in order to put together an application to that program. Item number 4 is for the town to adopt a fuel-efficient vehicle policy. And that includes all of the information that Jim Johnson put in the package for the board tonight, much of which is posted online. Certainly we can answer any questions that residents may have on that. And I know that Jim Johnson's been going back and forth with the folks at DOER and also with Ms. Goodman's assistance with all of the questions and that come along with this program and come along with this policy. So with that, Jim, I'd hand it over to you if you had anything just briefly to add, and then we can open it up to the board, have a little bit of a discussion. Maybe there's some questions for Ms. Goodman as well.
Sure. So what you have before you is the vehicle. So Ben, if you don't mind, I'd like to run through the criteria so people watch.
Yeah, please. No, Yeah,
So
sounds good.
in order to become a green community, a town must meet 5 criteria. I'll just run through the criteria. The first criteria is the town must demonstrate that it has passed the zoning in designated locations as of right, sitting for renewable or alternative energy facilities. The Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources has confirmed that we meet that criteria. Criteria 2 requires the town to adopt an expedited application permitting for which most facilities are interested in locating the facility in a designated renewable energy zone. Council has submitted a letter confirming that we have that in place. We did that years ago. Criteria 3 is we have to work with an energy firm to conduct an energy audit for municipal buildings. We started working with Guardian Energy maybe about a month or 2 ago. They're performing an energy audit. I know they've worked with Don Anderson to go through most, if not all, of the buildings already, and their audit is well underway. The 4th criteria is that we accept the fuel efficient vehicle policy, which is what I drafted and what's before you. The DOER gave us some boilerplate templates that we based our policy off of. And then criteria 4 is that we minimize adopt the stretch energy code, which we did this past fall. So we're close. We haven't gotten there completely. The deadline to get everything into the Department of Energy Resources is December 30th. So we have some time. So criteria 4 is the one we're focused in on. Is we have to adopt the policy. It has to be adopted and endorsed by the select board, and the school committee also has to adopt it. School committee has not adopted it yet. They have some questions, and they were waiting for what the select board was going to do tonight. So going back to the policy, there's what you have before you is the drafted policy. We've been working with Kara on basically taking our vehicle inventory and figuring out what we would need to do as far as replacement vehicles. You know, the town administrator's vehicle is a 2009 Explorer. You know, what would that mean as far as replacement in today's vehicle efficiency usage, whether it's a hybrid, electronic vehicle, or just something like a Ford Edge or something like that, that just gets better gas mileage. So that's what Kara's working on. I know she's been working with myself and Patrick to get our inventory, get our mileage and everything on these vehicles. And she's been doing a great job. We're really lucky to have her assisting us. And as far as the schools are concerned, when I spoke to the chairman and the school business manager, Mike Frischer, their concern was cost. Mike estimated the cost to be between $7,000 and $10,000 more per vehicle versus what he has now. He has a significant amount of vehicles over there just because of the school busing, the program that they run with the special ed department. They also have a significant amount of vehicles for this food services department. So that's something that they're going to need to keep in mind. I'm just looking at my notes here. He has 17 special ed vans and a food service van, plus a few other miscellaneous items. So they were all for this, the school department, but the concern was the additional cost. And they asked us to make sure that the town's involved in splitting the cost or absorbing the additional cost there. I know the police and fire department had a little bit of concern with emergency response vehicles in the police department before. We had the Dodge Chargers, and they were just not good in the snow. But I think the policy works around that, where it specifically says vehicles that do not respond to emergencies. Vehicles that do respond to emergencies will be exempt from this policy. So I think there's a workaround there. And Rick Mattson, DPW director, did make the note that our current vehicle maintenance staff is not qualified to work on these hybrid or electric vehicles. They don't have any training. So initially we likely have to send them out, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't train them as we get more and more of these vehicles in. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Ben, did I miss anything? Ben's been working with me hand in hand with this all throughout the last couple of months.
No, that's a very good summation, Jim. And so having spoken with a couple of members of the school committee, They were certainly, as Jim alluded to, they're looking to us for direction on this. And of course, we've been pursuing this pretty doggedly here for a couple of months, and we have a lot of the criteria in hand. And there are certainly very valid cost concerns about maintenance on some of these vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, as well as the van fleet that the school runs. And I think those are valid, one, because of the cost concerns associated with that, which are likely to be small, but also because it represents a change, right? And it's an opportunity for the town to enter into the Green Communities program and appreciate some of the grants and some of the funding that we can get for making these changes. The state has set this obviously very aggressive policy of 2050 for clean energy. And so at some point, we know that they're going to transition from giving towns grants and money to achieve this to expecting it, right? And it's going to become a requirement rather than a request. So we really need to, as a town, start working towards this, not only from a moral standpoint with global warming and whatnot and climate change, but also from just a reasonableness standpoint, from a financial standpoint. If we do a little bit each year and can take advantage of grants from the state and additional money, that's really the prudent way to go forward, as we've discussed a lot before. So just wanted to cover over those steps again. At this point, why don't we just go around to each of the board members and get any input, any comments, discussion points, questions. As I said, we have Ms. Goodman with here. She is the expert in everything Green Communities. So Nancy, why don't we start with you, please? Any questions or comments on this?
Thanks, Ben. So my initial comments that I sent back was just worrying about the costs, that it would relay back to the school department or any of the town departments in far as replacing vehicles, but also just the importance of us also buying American and making sure that, we stayed with American companies. But otherwise, I think, green communities and renewable energies is definitely where we want to go. Just we have to be responsible financially, balancing that with our budget, and then knowing that we're going to be coming into a few tough years.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy, for sure. And it is set up in such a way as to allow towns to adopt this in a piece-by-piece basis. It's not, the intent is not to have to swap over dozens of vehicles in year one. So we will have the opportunity to address this. The school committee can assess the best way to look at the van fleet and everything else going forward. And one of the exclusions, as Jim pointed to, was the police cruisers and emergency response vehicles are exempt. And the reason they're exempt is because there are no cost-effective, fuel-efficient vehicles currently that fit that mold. So that's something I know that everyone's working towards. But as soon as that does become a reality, then it'll become a part of the program. But until then, we can stick with what works for the town. So let's next go to David, please. Any questions or comments?
Sure. In speaking to the school committee, what is their, how many vans do they replace on a yearly basis? What's their current situation as far as vehicle purchases in the next 4 or 5 years?
So I reached out to Mike this morning and asked him that specific question. I said, do you have a vehicle replacement schedule / 5-year plan that you could share? His response was, we currently don't have a replacement plan because the vehicle usage varies from year to year. It's hard to predict when the vehicle is no longer worth maintaining. The only vehicles that we've replaced through this point are the pre-owned vehicles that we purchased from national van builders that had 75,000 miles on them to start. This was a Walpole resident who more or less donated them to the school department to get this program off. And then the other question I had was how many vehicles are up in the next fiscal year? Because I was thinking, how much will we have to kick in as part of the capital budget to offset their added costs? His response was 0. I have no vehicles that are at the end of their useful life within the next fiscal year. The only reason to make an additional purchase would be to hire a new driver and add a new route, which he would have to weigh do a cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it if there's a student in need that has to, that we need to add a van, add a driver, and add a monitor? So that's something to keep in mind. They will be adding a second food service van that is grant funded this year due to the growth of the program, the food program, and the original vehicle age. And that's we bought it in 2013. So I think we'll, as far as the school is concerned, no, they're not going to hit us up for any cost, year one.
And they said an extra 7,000. What is the cost of the vehicle that they're talking about? It's going to be an extra $7,000.
He estimated that, and that's one of the things that I'm working with Kara and Kathleen Warsaw, the intern that's assisting us. I want to get a spreadsheet in place that says, okay, list every vehicle off that will qualify under this policy, and TA's vehicle is a 2009 Explorer. It'll be replaced likely with an Edge or some type of Ford Focus that's efficient, and then do the cost difference of what's a 2020 Explorer versus an Edge or a Focus. I don't have that spreadsheet yet. We're working through that. So we're going to do the same for all the school vehicles.
Right, and some of those vans are going to be a significant amount of money. So 7,000 isn't going to be that much in the long run. And isn't your vehicle going to be exempt?
I think it says, I keep yours in mind, but I actually, years ago, Nancy worked that into my contract. I think I have to have a fuel efficient vehicle, whatever it comes up. That's why I've been holding on to it for so long.
Well, I mean, you're out there in the snow, you're out there in the emergencies. I don't know that you shouldn't have a vehicle assigned that has those capabilities, whether it's you or someone else that needs to use it. So,
may I chime in?
Please, Kara.
This is Kara from MAPC. To clarify a few things, so there's definitely no requirement to buy specifically hybrid or electric. It's just this mileage or better that's set per different class of car. So the standard right now for a two-wheel drive car is only 30 miles per gallon. So you're allowed to buy anything that gets 30 miles per gallon or better, which is frankly a pretty low bar. So there's plenty of cars on the market that meet that, and there's not going to be I think any cost difference would be very minimal. I think you'd probably have to try to spend more on the car, or to try to find a new car that doesn't get 30 miles per gallon or lower or higher, sorry. And it goes down for the other classes of car, right? So a two-wheel drive pickup truck is only 21 miles per gallon. I won't read them all out to you, but they're reasonable. They're not very high, so they shouldn't really be adding cost. And there's no explicit requirement to buy hybrid or electric. And as some folks have mentioned, anything that is used for emergency response, such as police or fire vehicles, are exempt, and they don't have to follow these policies.
Yeah. Thanks, Kara. David, anything further?
No, thank you.
Thanks, David. Mark, please.
So I would start off by saying I'm in favor of all the green community stuff. I'm probably not in favor of voting tonight. And let me sort of run through my list of issues. And one of them was just what Jim brought up a minute ago. I'd like to really understand which vehicles in our fleet, as we go to replace them, are gonna cost us a bunch more money. And I've been thinking a lot about the school vans as an example. I know that the schools have been buying those vans that are lightly used, a few years old vans, and then retrofitting them to transport students, which is great. But I know Mike has said that none of the vans they have meet the mileage standard. So the question is, if he's got to go buy, if you think if he's got a fleet of 15 or 20 vehicles, he should be replacing a couple every year. And if he's got to replace them, the question is, if he's replacing a Dodge Caravan that's 1 mile per gallon below the standard, what is it that he can buy and what's that going to cost? So it would be good. It would help me a lot to understand what's available, what's the price difference. And the police and fire, I think we're a little bit underfunded on police and fire in general. And I don't know of any vehicles used by anyone in police and fire who I would say are not emergency response vehicles. So I just want to be on record as saying that, both chiefs respond in their vehicles in the snow, in the rain, in the heat of the day, at night. So I wouldn't want to even take a chief car, a deputy chief car, and convert it to something that can't go in the snow. And again, I'm just not comfortable. I've read a bunch of stuff, and if you tell me all of those vehicles are exempt, I'm good right away. But, I don't want there to be confusion about, the chief's cars, the deputy chief cars, whoever's on that night driving around. I think they need to be fully capable to respond. I liked John Carmichael's comments about, I don't know what the right word is, chase vehicles, police rated vehicles, but heavy duty. I remember back to when for DPW and I think water and sewer, we bought a few of those Ford Ranger mid-size pickup trucks. And then we destroyed them in a really short amount of time because of the heavy strain we put on those vehicles. So, I just want to make sure we don't get caught up in the mileage thing and then wear out some of those vehicles. And again, I know we're talking about the marginal vehicles. Most of what we're using probably fits. But those are the things I'd really like to take a look at and know, okay, over the next couple of years, which vehicles have to get replaced? What can we replace them with? Just so we're really clear on that. I am in favor of this. I would like to see us get it passed by the end of the year. But I personally just need a little more clarity on a few of those issues and the replacement costs of those vehicles.
So just to clarify, you're correct that any vehicle that is used for emergency response is exempt. So we have, as a separate part of the application, we've got an inventory list that we're working on that Kate Worsing has been helping us with. So we've got all those, and we'll make sure that to clarify and double check with you all that we've got them all correctly listed. But anything that we list as that is decided to be exempt includes anything for emergency response, and those don't have to meet these purchasing guidelines.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
And I think Lisa sent around some other information about purchasing new vehicles off it and some resources on that, but I can see if I can find that again.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Jim O'Neill.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Hey, I have some of the same comments and concerns that Mark has. The question that the number one question is, when do we need to approve this by? Is there something magic about the year end?
Yeah, that's when the application needs to go in to be accepted in the program for the next year. So we could wait a whole another year.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But we have another meeting between now and then, right?
We have
8th
and 22nd.
Yeah. So if there were any specific questions that Kara didn't already answer tonight, I guess such as this spreadsheet, the drop dead date for us to vote on it actually would be December 8th. The school committee has a meeting on December 10th. As Jim Johnson alluded to, they're waiting for us to vote on it first, although they've all said that they're in favor of it. They're just waiting for us to vote first. So yeah, if there was some very specific questions that needed to be answered between now and the 8th, we could
Look, I'm gonna end up voting for this. So I don't think that's gonna be an issue for me. But I also want to make sure that we have actually done the due diligence on it, so that if I get asked, well, what do you really think the incremental costs of the town are? I can actually deal with that. And so I would really like to see a spreadsheet that says, here's all the vehicles. And the first thing I'd like to see is which ones are we going to declare as being exempt? Because I read Chief Carmichael's note, I read Chief Bailey's note. I even see in the DPW discussion, there's a lot of emergency vehicles in there too. And so what I would really like to be able to say is we have X number of vehicles, here they all are, here's the whole fleet. These are the ones that we're going to declare as exempt, and make sure that we're all very clear on that point. Then what I'd like to know is, of the ones that are left, can we get some kind of an estimate of what it's going to cost us in 2021, 22, 23, 24? Look at it over a 5-year period and just say, what's the sort of burn-in period? Once we get it into the run rate, it's no longer a problem. but the getting it into the run rate, depending on how much incremental it is year over year, could conceivably be a problem. And given where we are right now, I just think that's something that I would like to be able to say that I know what that looks like. So that would be important to me. Then there are just a couple other questions that I would like to hear answered. One is somewhere in the memo there is a note that says I guess this means if we buy electric vehicles, we will need charging stations. Tim has raised the question of maintaining those vehicles and training people. Again, from a due diligence point of view, I'd love to be able to say that I have at least a reasonable grasp of what those costs look like, without just voting for it. And then the last point is that I know there's a point in there in the school piece where the point was made, look, the schools would look to the town to cover the costs. So, we do the 60 something, 40 something, whatever the split is. I don't even know what the split is at this point, but we split the municipal and the school side. My impression from reading that is there's an expectation that we will cover all of these costs out of the municipal side of the budget, which is, it's 30 something %, I think. So I just want to make sure that, again, we're all clear on that, so that we don't find ourselves in a spot where all of a sudden we go, oh, yeah, we agreed to that, and now you've got to take some cuts on the municipal side. So those are where my concerns are. Again, I fully intend to vote for this, but I really want to be able to say that we've looked at these things and that I have at least some better understanding than I have right now as to what I'm actually voting for. Does that make sense?
Sure. Kara, you have something to add there?
Sure. So the first thing is that hybrid and electric vehicles are not a requirement of this. If the town chooses to buy them, they will meet the requirement, but they are not in and of themselves. There's no requirement to buy hybrid or electric. So if the town is interested in that, that's something you can pursue down the line, and that's something you may be able to get funding from green communities for those specific vehicle types. But that's not a requirement. So I don't think that needs to be one of the considerations at this time. And then the other thing was that we do have that whole list of vehicles, and Kathleen has been working on it. So if you haven't been CC'd on those emails, we can definitely get you a copy of it. And the standard that they have written in the criteria is that the fuel efficiency ratings are set to ensure that at least 5 or more automatic transmission models of mass production are available for sale in Massachusetts from affordable brands, not luxury brands. And it's based on the 2020 EPA data. So they aren't trying to set any unrealistic standards for these cars. They're just trying to make sure they're reasonably efficient.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. That's very helpful. So, frankly, all of the questions have been answered tonight, with the exception of issuing the spreadsheet to everybody. So I'm fine with waiting till the 8th for everyone to digest that spreadsheet. I know that we have it at this point, and we can distribute that to everybody. But as far as the charging costs, the station costs, we're just getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. Certainly, I think I would love to see that. That's something that we've discussed with the school committee as well, in reference to the vans and that program. That program has saved the town a lot of money, but we've certainly put ourselves in the box with it, right? As far as cost savings and depending on some possibly unreliable streams there. And so what this really does for us generally as a town, but certainly speaking specifically about the vans, is kind of setting a new precedent, right? As a town, we need to be in a new place making these decisions. And there are places where we need to rub pennies together, and there are places where we should actually be advancing the ball and not buying, 15-year-old vans that get very poor gas mileage. So I think that's the big consideration of this. In and of itself, there's hundreds of towns that have adopted this, and to my knowledge, none of them have gone bankrupt. So just to bring a little bit of context to the discussion here before we get wound down into the ground too far. Nancy, did you have another question?
Yes, I did want to bring up, Jim had mentioned it. Is there education opportunities for our DPW fleet crew that would be working on these? kinds of cars? Is there, grant education assistance, like programs that will be funded that we can send our employees to?
The first one that comes to mind is UTI. I'm pretty sure that's in Norwood. We recently hired a graduate from there. So he's the guy we brought in a year or two ago. So I'd probably work with Tommy and Rick to I'm guessing the training is not going to be that extensive. But we would definitely find somewhere local to work on it.
Jim, I'm saying I'm looking for assistance from the state going through the green properties, not for us to take it on. Like, the initiative, does the initiative itself offer those opportunities for us to be able to get our employees?
I'm not aware of a training program specific to that. But like I mentioned before, the hybrid and electric vehicles are totally optional. So you can easily meet the requirements with normal gas vehicles. They're just a little bit more fuel efficient. So it's an option, and that is a good cost to consider if you take that option, but it's not a requirement.
And right. I'll circle back, Nancy, and get some answers directly from DOR and see if there's any opportunities.
That would be great, because I think it would be a really smart initiative for the green communities in the state to offer, to also help us as towns make it an easier decision and an easier path to take. I mean, if that's the goal, you would think that they would start to be proactive and want to get us as towns to start participating in things like that and get our workforces educated in that role.
I'll get some answers before the 8th.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great. And I think it's a valid point, because we'd want to have our people trained, and we'd want to have knowledge of the infrastructure needed for charging stations and things like that. All that would need to be in place. We're not going to run out in January and buy a bunch of electric cars that we don't know how to fix and that we can't charge. So that's again, down the road as far as I plan. Mark.
Hey, Ben, I did want to make one more comment that I forgot to make earlier. And while I'm worried about the vehicles and what the replacement cost changes may be, that is very easily balanced off by the grant program. So I think it mentioned in there that our first year in the grant program, we may be eligible for up to $165,000 worth of eligible projects. And I know they're studying right now, what projects could we do to be more energy efficient and all that kind of stuff. So I think the big picture is it's a great program. It's going to help us do a bunch of capital projects that should save us money over the long haul. And again, I didn't want to just focus in only on the increased costs, because they do balance out. And I want everybody to understand that. But I am worried about those, because those costs are going to come out of or go into two different buckets. And just want to make sure there's no surprises when we need more money in bucket A and we get more money into bucket B. So I just want everybody to understand we got to look at the big picture. And again, that's why I think big picture, this is a good thing, and I'm going to vote for it. So.
Yeah, and actually that's a great point to maybe zoom out a little bit. 30,000 foot view is, we've been working with, there's a Walpole Green group in town that's not affiliated with the town administration, and there's also a student group, and there's quite a few Walpole High School graduates and other high school graduates that live in Walpole that work with the student group at the high school. So there's a lot of folks out there working on these initiatives. So if we can pull that into a green committee that actually works with Jim Johnson and with the town, I know that Jim had said, pursuing these grants and going after these. Unfortunately, we're not always going to have Kara with us to be a resident expert and drum these things up. But we are working on a charge for possible green committee, and that's something that'll come before the board, hopefully in December, to talk about and something to discuss with Jim Johnson as well, as far as there's these grants out there and we have these ideas about maybe training. Who's going to interface with DOER on that? And certainly to some extent it's us as the board, to some extent it's Jim. The hope would be that it would be a green committee that we can pull under the umbrella of the town. So that's again zooming out to a big picture. So we've gone through everybody. We'll put this on the agenda for December 8th, and we'll communicate to the school committee that we'll be voting on it then. Kara, the other document, all the titles are blending together. What's the other document that we need to vote on?
Yeah, so there will be one more piece for the Green Communities application called the Energy Reduction Plan. Sometimes we call it ERP. So that will be the final piece for criteria 3, which is the plan or the pathway to reduce municipal energy use. So that's something that the Mass Energy Insight, the data we're compiling online, will feed into, and the audit reports that are being done currently will also feed into. So you'll get to see me again next month, and I'll answer any questions then on that piece of it.
And so we can distribute that document prior to the 8th. We'll have that all ready so that the board can vote on it, because I know that then that'll have to flip over to the school committee as well. So I just want to make sure that we have everything before this board on the 8th. That's possible.
Make one comment.
Yeah, 1 second, David. Kara. So we'll have all that ready on the 8th, that we can do both the ERP and the vehicle policy.
That's the plan. Yes.
Yeah, that's the plan.
If
That's laid plans.
Super hung up with the audit or anything like that, then you said you had the 22nd, might be a possibility.
Yeah, we'll make it work. But let's shoot for the 8th. Yep, let's shoot for the 8th. Board members, we'll distribute all this information to everyone and can communicate prior to that point. Again, I'll let the school committee know that we'll do our business on the 8th, hopefully, so that they can do theirs on the 10th. David, please, you have another question?
Sure. So presently, the school department buys these vehicles on their budget, and they're just looking to us for the difference between the cost of what would be a less fuel efficient vehicle than the more fuel efficient vehicle. Am I stating that correctly?
Yes, Jim, that's your understanding, right?
That's the way Mike explained it to me.
Yeah.
But they currently don't have a plan for replacing vehicles, or that we don't even know what that looks like at this point. I think if they're asking us to take that out of the 30% budget or the 40% budget, whatever it is, I mean, I think that 60-40 split is a ridiculous concept to begin with. But I think we should be funding needs, and whether they're higher or lower depends on a particular year. But then they better lay that all out by the 8th, because I don't think we are making a commitment, or shouldn't make a commitment, that we're going to fund these costs until we know what they are. And and if they don't think they can find the financial wherewithal to take part in this program, then they can vote against it. I just don't know. I mean, it's, this pie in the sky, this number that they just come out with. So I think we need something more specific from them if they want some kind of agreement as to what kind of funding mechanism is going to take place.
Jim, when we talked about the spreadsheet of all the vehicles, are the vans on that as well?
It was my intent to have them on there.
Yeah. So that'll be on there, David. That'll be on the spreadsheet that we distribute.
And I made a note to myself then that, when Mike's response was, "What's the plan? Do you have a vehicle replacement plan?" They don't have one. I'm going to ask them to put one together and develop one, similar to the way we do our 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Right. That's the piece that's missing. That there is no plan at this point.
Right, and notwithstanding the issues, David, with the 60-40 split, what they're looking for, the school committee, and what they've said to me is just the acknowledgement that we're going to work together. It's sort of like a teamwork thing. You're not going to leave us on an island, right? And so the answer is no, we're not going to leave you on an island. As Kara alluded to, the increases in costs are small, but they just want the assurance that we're going to be team players, and that it's not going to be an issue headed down the road. So that's really what we're talking about. But those vehicles will be on the spreadsheet. We'll be able to look at that specifically prior to the 8th. All right. Anybody else? Last chance. Questions, comments? We're going. Thank you again, Kara, for being with us tonight, answering all those questions. Certainly we'll be in touch, in the next couple of days and working towards the 8th. So thank you. Thank you for your help.
Thanks, Kara.
Thanks, Kara.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Great. So, moving on. Good evening, Chief Carmichael.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Good. So we are getting here to Police Chief Carmichael's quarterly update, and then one other piece of business, and then we'll move to Fire Chief Bailey's quarterly update. Please, Chief Carmichael, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. First, as usual, I start out with personnel issues, and I'd also like to take a moment while I talk about personnel issues just to recognize the department and our officers and dispatchers and personnel that have worked through the pandemic, the worst pandemic that we've seen in 100 years. So, they've had to really go above and beyond what's normally expected of them. And I just want to say publicly that how much I appreciate what they've done. We've had to have a lot of policy changes, wearing PPE on different types of calls and that kind of thing. And really our burden and what we do out there every day hasn't changed at all, other than the burden might be a little bit more because of the pandemic. So I just want to recognize them and thank them for what they've been doing out there. I also want to who was promoted in August. He assumed the command of community services within the department, has been doing a really good job, especially with our community policing efforts, writing grants for us and securing grants for the department, and done a great job with that. Officer Steve Foley, who's been a police officer for over 25 years here in Walpole, is now a court prosecutor. And the Walpole Police Department at this point is now up to 44 sworn officers with 5 members of the command staff. Tonight, with the board's consideration of Jimmy Dolan to the position of sergeant, we'll have 8 sergeants and 32 patrol officers and detectives, an administrative assistant, 10 dispatchers, 2 part-time clerks, and our 8 crossing guards. So the department's up to 65 overall. That also includes the animal control officers. So as the town grows, the department's been growing. So we are going to have to keep up with that. Commendations, I want to just mention, our commendations that I'm going to mention are also relative to some of the critical incidents that we saw in the past, in this past quarter. Detective Sergeant Tolan and Detective Taylor Bethany involved in the incident that the board is aware of, a stabbing incident in Walpole Center, where we were notified by a area hospital that they were treating a stabbing victim. This investigation led to Rosendale, where a suspect was identified, a couple of search warrants were executed, and a person was placed under arrest. And our detectives worked literally around the clock to investigate that case and make an arrest on it. And they did a great job. Nicole Gennard and Michelle Slavin receiving the Molly, Massachusetts Women in Law Enforcement Award for courage involved after the armed robbery call that they responded to and how they handled that situation. Dispatcher Jenna Barrett and Cindy Jackman on the delivery of EpiPen and assisting a father whose 7-month-old baby was suffering from anaphylactic shock. And this comes right on the heels of town meeting approving the department the ability to have officers and dispatchers trained in EpiPen. So it didn't take long for that to kick in and work for us. Detective Kevlich, on investigations, as you know, our overdoses have actually decreased this year, which is really good. However, our enforcement efforts have been kicked up with Detective Sergeant Ian Toland and Detective Kevlich, who's been doing an incredible job with infiltrating some of the drug organizations that are in and around the Boston area, making several significant arrests over this past quarter, where he was able to seize over 100 grams of fentanyl, which is the main drug causing a lot of the overdoses and fatalities. And that's a significant amount. He's made several arrests doing that. And these are cases where it's an 8-year minimum mandatory sentence. So that tells you how serious these cases are. But it does affect and dismantle or disrupt that organization, so that we have that 2-pronged approach of helping people that are suffering from substance use disorder, as well as the enforcement side of it. And then we have Officer Foley and Doherty following a rape investigation that they both worked very hard on, identifying 2 suspects and 2 arrests on that. And Dispatcher Brittany Wren, Dispatcher Kevin Quinn, Officer Phil Powers, John Murphy, and William Mitchell involved in a call at one of our hotels where there was a 911 caller who was suffering from a seizure and actually blacked out during the call and gave us the wrong room number. But the officers and dispatchers worked collectively to end up going room to room search and identifying and locating that person so that the paramedics were able to get that person to the hospital and kind of administer aid. So that worked out very well. I've sent the board the typical quarterly report update, which you've all received, I'm sure. This past quarter, we had about 4,000 calls for service and or incidents, 25 arrests and 25 criminal complaint applications issued, and about 550 citations. The 25 arrests and the complaints are again a reduction in what we typically see. But as I'll mention next is the mental health calls. And over the last 3 years, I also sent the board our mental health information, and Sergeant John White actually did a great job of pulling out all of our data. And last year we had 283 mental health calls, and this year so far we've already had 421, so another over 100% increase. And so when we're seeing these mental health calls, these aren't just 2-minute calls. These are situations where we're engaging the individual, engaging the family, seeking resources and help for them. Our firefighters and paramedics are in a position to have to transport these people to the hospital so that they can be evaluated and helped out. And really, a lot of the reason why we have reduced arrests and criminal complaints has to do with the fact that our mental health engagement and how we're dealing with these situations are designed to seek alternatives to arrest. And so, as you know, our officers are being trained. We continue to train on that. Lieutenant Kilroy has been doing a great job of making sure we're working towards getting the entire department trained in mental health response. But this is significant. Mental health right now is absolutely one of our most significant public safety issues. I know I see Chief Bailey shaking his head like this is what we're dealing with a lot. And with the pandemic, that didn't go away. It actually helped exacerbate the problem. So it's very important that we continue to deal with it and stay in front. As you know, we always bring up the Longview statistics. We've been to Longview 329 times so far this year. There's been 119 incidents. As the board knows, we've been in touch with and had multiple meetings in the past couple of weeks with DCF, the commissioners of DCF, the staff and directors at Longview, the Home for Little Wanderers, Department of Early Education and Care. We've been meeting with everybody. The board sent the governor a letter as well. And I'll say that the meetings that we've had in the last week have been very, given us some hope, I think. I know we've been here before, but Officer Van Ness and Officer Bird, as you know, are our liaisons down there, and they continue to work every day with the staff and try and partner with them because we know that's the only way that we can address the issues there. And DCF has actually come up with the idea to use what Walpole has been doing as a pilot program and something that they may try and implement across the state as we continue to meet and try and come up with policy decisions and how we're handling situations there. I'll also get into our overdose statistics. As I mentioned, our overdoses are down, which is good. Last year, we had 31 total overdoses and 6 fatalities. And this year, going into December, we have 15 and 1 fatality. So we continue to deal with that issue, get people resources. We do have the ability to place people in protective custody now. So some of those overdoses that might have been labeled as an overdose before could be in protective custody where we're transporting, or our paramedics are transporting people to the hospital if they're incapacitated by drugs. And we've had 32, I believe, protective custodies at this point of the year. Just a couple of quick policies. As the board knows, the Brady-Gigolo policy for testifying in court is one we've implemented in the department, as well as a new detail and overtime policy for accountability on our police details. this comes in light of, not that officers or our department's done anything wrong, but we want to make sure that we're ahead of the situations that we're kind of seeing plague law enforcement departments across Massachusetts, and make sure that we have the right accountability in place to address any issues as far as details and payments and that sort of thing. Community policing, as you know, school opened up a different way of doing it this year with a different cohort. So we had to actually expand our school opening operations plan over a couple of week time frame. And that was to make sure that the kids adjusted and the parents who were commuting, a lot of commuters this year, that everybody was adjusted before we kind of backed off on the amount of officers that we were assigning to that. We did update all of our new teachers and students moving up to different schools in Alice. And that's that program continues to be successful as well. So I think that pretty much wraps up. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything. Oh, one other thing.
Chief.
Yeah.
Oh, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I neglected to mention, I know, Chairman, you mentioned that you wanted to talk a little bit about accreditation and certification standards.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Joe Zangetti, who's doing an awesome job of making sure that we're implementing all of our policies and procedures into our list of accreditation standards. The department this is probably one of our #1 goals right now. Massachusetts Accreditation Commission requires us to have 159 mandatory standards that we need to meet as far as certification, and then 257 in order to meet our accreditation standards. And what this does is it makes the department legitimate. It makes us have a higher standard, professionalized department. These all, as you know, you've seen many of our policies and procedures. A lot of them are based on high liability, low frequency type of incidents, police pursuit, use of force, our holding facility, juvenile issues, our chain of custody for evidence and property, and a lot of different things, a host of things that are standards for law enforcement to actually operate at a very high level. And this has been one of our goals for a long time, and we're going to get there. We never were able to accomplish this in our old station just because of the facility itself. But now that we're in the new station, this is something that we're going to go for full steam ahead.
Great. All right, well, thank you for the update, Chief, and thank you also for going to the above accreditation and the other information and documentation that you sent to us. So it's very helpful, certainly an important initiative for you all to undertake. And I appreciate the updates on the policies as well. Absolutely imperative they continue to change, not only with the times, but with the law and with the town and the population, and continue to update those to reflect that. So thank you, and for your attention to that. We're to open it up, just if you show your hand to a comment by the board. David Salvatore, I see your hand is raised, but I think that was from before.
It was, but
Go ahead.
I'll take a quick comment. So I'm very happy to see that the 2 female officers got acknowledged for that robbery at Cumberland Farms. I know we don't have time to tell it tonight, but that was quite a story about what the 2 women accomplished in tracking down those suspects who ended up being suspects in robberies around the region, and actually one that same night, I believe, somewhere in Norwood or somewhere else. So congratulations to them, and to you, Chief. Thank you. Good job as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else from the board? Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, good evening, Chief. Just quickly on the Longview Farm situation, are you feeling any difference since we've had the meetings, we've sent the letter? I know you've been contacted by DCF. Are you feeling any difference in terms of what's happening up at Longview at this point?
I am, and kind of what we did a little bit differently this time is we've never actually had a meeting with the deputy commissioners of DCF. In the past couple of weeks, we've had meetings with 2 of them, 2 of the highest, just under the commissioner of DCF. So that was significant. And I think that once we had that meeting done, we met with the director of Longview. We met with people from the Home for Little Wanderers. We met with DC, who actually licensed the Home for Little Wanderers. And also different this time was we met with the people who actually contract, that work kind of as the conduit between DCF, Home for Little Wanderers, and Longview. So the people that contract them. And what we did this time is, and Officer Van Ness and Officer Bird, who know these kids, they're up there every day. They know them by name. They work up there every day with them. They were able to actually talk about like case studies, actual incidents, and I know the board's aware of these, we've talked about them, situations where kids that have been placed up there have been involved, they're there for 6 months, but they're 54, 58 incidents just for that one individual. And we look at that as, that's not good or proper oversight. And when we file a 51A abuse and neglect report, that has to do with lack of supervision. And we look at that as being a lack of supervision issue. And so we've gotten them to really look at these specific incidents that happened. And based on that, now we're starting to make some changes and policy changes as to, do we put a one-on-one ratio with that child and and an aide or a staff member down there? Or do they have to make sure they apply different types of disciplinary actions down there at the Home for Little Wanderers? Or perhaps that child is not fitting into that actual program and they should be moved somewhere else. They also talked about intervention earlier in the process, as you know, so once you get to 34 times when you're dealing with the same individual for the same thing, they want to be able to intervene with that child earlier and then provide the programs and the resources that they have at the earlier stages. And to be honest with you, DCF wasn't really aware of the police liaisons that we had there, how well they know those kids. And they actually told us that they want to work with us now to help change their policies. For the first time ever, both our liaisons were on their policy meeting this past week. And again, we went over those case studies, and we're coming up with ideas that they seem to really be open to, and ideas that they want to actually begin a pilot program where Walpole's model and Home for Little Wanderers model and Longview would be used and implemented across the Commonwealth at other types of facilities. And this is obviously the very early stages. We're a long way before we get there, but at least I do have and I know I've said this before, I have a good feeling about what we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks. And I hope it pans out.
Yeah, as do I. And so thanks for that update. That's actually really good to hear, and it is encouraging. Although, as we know, we have been here before. But these are more encouraging signs. The engagement that you seem to be having with DCF in particular is much more than what it has been in the past. That's encouraging. And, for the sake of the kids up there, I mean, I really hope that we can make this thing, work out, because the situation's untenable the way it's been. But thanks for that update, and thanks for everything you're doing with your leadership to try and drive, the real change that needs to happen as we, host that facility and the kids. And again, it's all to their benefit to get this right. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that when they hear that, to us, the kids at Longview are Walpole kids. And, and I know the board feels the same way, that it's their safety and the safety of the staff in the neighborhood that's paramount to us. And that's where we've kept our focus. The calls for service and the resources, that's an issue. But at the end of the day, it's their safety. These kids, as you know, they have terrible backgrounds, and when they leave, they're already at risk. So we have to work very hard to locate them and return them and make sure that they're safe.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I would echo that as well, Chief. Definitely keep us updated and in the loop on how that's going, on a weekly or monthly basis, or whatever's convenient for you when you hear from them. Given our letter to the governor, and when we hear as well, we'll coordinate with you. Just to go back to the accreditation really briefly, what is the timeline for that? Just big picture, not specific dates. Is that still a 2-year program going out, or are we nearing accreditation where?
1 year. So Lieutenant Zanghetti's right next to me here. So we're at, I sent the board that kind of updated list of like where we are as far as, and we're at about 110 standards right now out of the 159 for certification. That's the furthest, we've never been this far. And so that's why it's kind of light at the end of the tunnel type of a situation. But, you know, the good thing is over the years, as you know, with our policies and everything, we've been putting our policies in place based on the certification and accreditation standards. So there's been some tweaks that we have to keep making along the way to make sure that we're in compliance with it. Just about having the standard. It's, you have the standard and you have to show that you actually do it. And that things are where they're supposed to be and we do things the way that we're supposed to be doing them. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of oversight and compliance. And every day, I know Lieutenant Zanghetti's working feverishly to get us to where we need to get. So we're about a year out.
Great, thank you. Okay, and there's one other piece of business that you have before us here, Chief.
Yes, thank you. So as you know, we have a sergeant opening with the promotion of John White to lieutenant. And this promotion is overdue. This is Officer Jim Dolan. Jimmy has been a police officer in Walpole for almost 35 years. He is, I guess you would call that a seasoned veteran. Right, Jimmy? He's had quite a career so far. Jimmy started, you know, he's been a patrol officer for many years, and he's been involved in just about every facet of the department. He was an exemplary detective, involved in many high-profile cases back in the day. He's worked with NORPAC, our task force. He's worked mobile operations on a motorcycle, ATV unit. But most respectfully, Jimmy is involved in a lot of extracurricular activities outside of the department. He's very involved in concerns of police survivors, which is the group that is a group for police officers who die in the line of duty and the support mechanisms in place for their families. Jimmy is very involved in that. He's also on the executive board for the Mass Police Association. And Jimmy is one of those guys that he has so much experience and knowledge and ability that he's probably been the officer in charge. Like, we don't always have a sergeant in charge of the shift. Sometimes it's an officer in charge, we call it. And many times Jimmy ends up with that leadership role, and there's never been an issue. And when I say this, I mean, as many years as I can remember, when Jimmy is in charge of the shift, it goes smoothly. It doesn't matter if critical incidents or whatever happens on that shift, Jimmy deals with it. He addresses it. He's very well respected by our younger officers and older officers. And, you know, he's been around for a long time. We know that he's going to do a great job in the next 2 or 3 years before he hits that retirement age. And he's going to provide some very good leadership for our younger officers. And we really look forward to it. And I'm really happy for him.
Thank you, Chief. So what we'll do here is just run through briefly, you know, Officer Dolan, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to each one of the select board members if they have any questions or comments first. So please, Officer Dolan, go ahead.
I'm thankful for the chief and his command staff and having the faith in me to do this. I've been here for a long time. I've been in this department for 35 years and a town resident for almost 40. I've been involved not only in the extracurricular activities within the department and outside it, but in the community also. I've coached the youth soccer teams, the girls softball, the high school, the freshman and JV teams in the past. It's been rewarding. I've had the support of my family. They were here earlier, and it's just been a huge support mechanism all throughout the town.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's go around to the board members now. If we could, Nancy, start with you.
Sure. I'll start actually with a motion to appoint Jimmy Dolan to a well-deserved position of sergeant You have been such an asset to the town, so well deserved of you, and all of your volunteer work and charity work. You've put in as many hours outside of your shift work as you have in your shift work, and for all families, police families, it's always been appreciated. And you're just, as John said, a leader within the department, and it's going to be really great for you to obtain this. So I'm very excited to make that motion for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next, we'll go to David.
Yes, I'll second, since I'm the second to talk, and congratulations, and certainly well deserved. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Mark?
I would say congratulations. I know you're one of those people who has shown tremendous leadership all along the way, and you're to be commended for that. And congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Jim O'Neill, please.
Congratulations, Jimmy, and for all your years of service and all the things you've done in the town. You're a true exemplar, and listening to the chief talk about your accomplishments over the years certainly drives that point home. I love the way he describes the way you run the shift, and that's awesome. So congratulations, well done.
Thank you very much.
And I would just add, Officer Dolan, apologies for keeping you waiting here. I appreciate you hanging around. I know we went a little over on some of the earlier items, but we appreciate it very much. Congratulations to you for sharing. On a personal note, my son is 5 years old, and you're his favorite Walpole Police Department officer. He's seen you out and around on the bike probably 3 or 4 times at various places in town, and you always take a moment to talk to him. And you're very tall, maybe one of the most imposing guys on the department, and he's taken with that. So thank you very much for that, and for your service for the town.
Thank you very much.
So we have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. 5-0-0. Motion passes. Congratulations, Sergeant Dolan. Thank you again for your service.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate it. Anything further to add before we move on tonight?
No, I think just thank you very much, and for the board's consideration tonight. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. All right, moving on. We'll go to Fire Chief Bailey. Hello, Chief. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Very good.
I'd like to start off with talking about COVID, seeing as that is what has pretty much taken up most of our time here at the department, or a big portion thereof, since we last met on July 14th. As I had mentioned the last time we met, on March 16th, we had 12 members that were put out of here, and we've been very diligent ever since then. On March 20th, we opened up Station 2, and we still continue to operate with Station 1 and Station 2, and all of our members dealing with COVID responses on a daily basis, both in town as well as out of town. As you know, the Norwood Hospital is no longer operational, at least for the time being, and that has put a tremendous strain on all of the departments in the area with long response times and having to help each other out. So we've been doing a lot of mutual aid to our neighboring partners, and they have been doing a lot into us as well. We've been able to manage the workload even with the long response times, which are increased by about 45 minutes from what they used to be with Norwood Hospital. As Chief Carmichael had mentioned, I owe my staff a tremendous amount of gratitude. They are on the front line of this thing every day. They come back here, they spend countless hours decontaminating and cleaning the ambulance so that it's ready for the next run. We do have 3 of them, so if there's another run that comes in, they pop off and they take that. So we're always ready to go, and I owe them a tremendous amount of gratitude for that. Our call volume for 2020 has been very high. We had a couple of months there were lulled out because of the COVID when we first started back in March. And then when things started to open up, things took off here. We are currently at the same pace and actually a little bit ahead of where we were last year on emergency calls with 3,257. We've had a lot of serious incidents, as well as inspections and permits. We're at 7,408 calls for service, so 22 calls for service per day with the staffing that we have. The several major incidents, we've had several major storms. On August 4th, we had a severe storm come through that produced 33 runs for us in a 4-hour period. On September 30th, the same thing happened with 26 runs in about a 4-hour period from another storm. And then the big one was on October 7th, in a storm that lasted for approximately 10 minutes. We did 34 runs. We had major damage throughout the community. And we had a section of the community that we actually could not get to very easily, that being North Walpole. North Street was closed, High Street was closed, Fisher Street was closed, and we could not get up into that area. It created a lot of issues for people trying to get around because it was early in the evening. People were trying to get home from work, and it lasted until the next morning as far as our access up there. We actually had to put an engine on the other side of the damage so that I could protect the North Walpole area for the evening. And it actually was beneficial to have that there as we had a major CO call up in that area of town that evening. And their response and their being able to get to that call in a timely fashion definitely made a difference. We had a Tier 1 hazmat since July. We've had multiple fires here in Walpole, which I keep the chairman apprised of when we have them, as well as the town administrator. And we've also been to our neighboring communities on several occasions. We went to Franklin for 2 second alarms, Foxborough for a second alarm. We've been to Norwood, Sharon, and the list goes on. We've also had 2 med flights in that time. The current ambulance balance is 1.6 million. FY20, we brought in 1.3 million. And so far in FY21, 437,428. Fire prevention, it's the same old mantra that I've said for years now. Extremely busy. The deputy's doing a great job trying to stay on top of it. And we'll just continue on. The budget, there's no issues at this time, but the number of recalls that we've had for all the incidents that we've had is starting to add up. We're still currently in a pretty good position. I am keeping an eye on it. And if need be, I will come back before the board before my next quarterly if needed. Grants, we have a regional supplemental grant for personal protective equipment that was done by the Norfolk County Chiefs. We received that grant, so we were able to get some much needed PPE. We are in pretty good shape with our PPE here at the station currently. With all of the different pieces that we have, from N95s to gowns to gloves, we have about 32,000 pieces of equipment. So most of that is in gloves. We have almost 20,000 gloves, and it's a good thing because we were notified today that our glove manufacturer has ceased producing gloves because of a COVID outbreak at the facility. So they are shutting down the facility for the foreseeable future, and that may be difficult for us to get. So we're in pretty good shape with that. We also have the CARES Relief Fund. We have a little bit of money left in that. Originally, we had gotten a payment of $27,000. That was for PPE, and we have used most of that. We still have a little bit of that remaining. We also have a coronavirus emergency supplemental funding grant that we got through CGIS, and that was for a total of $24,708, $12,708, which was for PPE, and $12,000 for the cleaning of the station and apparatus on a monthly basis. We've had them in here already, and we continue to do that with the company. Plus, we also do decontamination of the building whenever we have a member that may have been exposed, or we can do our own decontamination as well. Our safe and senior grants have been put on hold because we aren't able to go and meet with those groups currently because of the pandemic. So those are in a holding pattern. On our training, we have our towel addict training, which we received through town meeting, and that will be taking place in 2 weeks. Our ALS refresher is currently ongoing. We're not allowed to do any in-person training, but that's being done virtually online with our vendor, and that is going very well. The personnel here receive periodic COVID-19 updates from myself and the deputy as information comes out and changes. As you know, the information is changing daily. We get a directive to do one thing one day and then the changes the next day. And it's just the way it is. So we've also done new building familiarizations with several of the new buildings that are in town. On the personnel side of things, I have 2 members. I had 1 member that graduated from the Fire Academy in September. He is now on shift. I have 2 members who are in the Fire Academy currently, and they will be graduating on December 4th, hopefully, as long as we don't have an outbreak at the academy. And I have another one who will be the last of the 4, will be graduating on January 8th. He is also in the academy. Injuries, we've had 5 injuries since July. All are back except for 1 who remains out. And that is a recent injury, so hopefully we can get him back soon. And open burning will be opening up again. Permits are available. That'll be opening up. Burning season is from January 15th to May 1st. And I'll answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate that comprehensive update. We'll just go with raise your hand for the board here. Any members have a question or comment for the chief? No further. Oh, Mark, please.
I just wanted to say thanks, and the community does notice all the hard work by the fire department and the police department on a daily basis. You know, trying to do everything you normally had to do and do it in a COVID safe way is really an overwhelming task. And I know the community appreciates how hard everybody's working to make that happen and try to keep everything going on a daily basis. So just wanted to recognize that and let you know, the police officers and the fire department know how much everybody really does appreciate that, even if they don't say that often enough as they should. So just wanted to reiterate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said, Mark.
I did have a quick question. You said something about, as far as your staffing and positive tests among the staffs of COVID-19 tests. What has been the status of that? I know you had a few scares. What is the current, do you have any positive officers or firefighters?
Yes, I currently have 2 members that are out. They were out prior to any exposures to anyone else here at work.
Great. And how are they feeling?
They're doing well.
Okay, great. And that's it. I mean, I'm sure it's all been a developing process. I remember the early days, we were all just like running around, not knowing what to do. But it's great that you guys can protect yourself, knowing that you are daily exposed to people with the virus. You know, I haven't gotten sick, but I know that I might not have been exposed to people getting sick, but you guys are on a daily basis. So clearly your training and protocols are doing what they're supposed to do, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said, David. And to expand upon Mark's point as well, Chief, you know, and to both Chief Carmichael as well, and we know all the dispatchers, when we are confronted with an incident like what happened in North Walpole with the microburst and the storm, and living right near where that happened, you know, I can say firsthand and with our neighbors, see the coordination from the dispatchers to the police department to the fire department as well, Chief Bailey, was just exemplary. And so we'd rather not have these instances where we need to see you all spring into action. But it's great to know that when we do, that you're all there to count on. And that went about as smoothly and evenly as could be expected. So really, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And if I could just add, the other departments that were out there was Parks, DPW, they all responded. I was up there with them, and Inspectional Services, Jim Crowley and Brian Leary going through a couple of houses, and everyone just pitched in and helped out. Everyone was on the same team for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, communication and coordination, particularly in those instances, is so important. So thank you. And anybody else? Okay, thank you, Chief Bailey. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And please do keep us apprised as you go through. I know talking about PPE and costs, please do reach out to us if anything does arise in the interim. So thank you.
I will, thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on to the last item under appointments. I had emailed back and forth with David Salvatore a couple times over the last few weeks about the school building committee. The school building committee is meeting tonight. They have a hearing for the public to hear about, the ongoing MSBA process and the investigations that are taking place through the building committee. David is the select board's representative on the school building committee, and so I'd asked him just to give a real brief update, just the high notes on where that is, and this may be something that we can bring up on a monthly basis or an as-needed basis with David to just coordinate and keep abreast of what the new school building committee is doing. So, David, if you could just hit a few high points for us and let us know what's going on, we appreciate it.
Sure. Since this is sort of the first time we did this, I'll start from the beginning. One of the big tasks is to hire professionals to do the work for us. One of the biggest tasks was to hire the owner's project manager. We end up with Compass. It's the same company that did our police station and I believe the fire, all three projects in town. And they have been exemplary. They have also had previously done school buildings, and they did a great job previously in Norwood. And I was especially impressed that they had dealt with a contractor that had gone bankrupt and were able to keep the project going, and it was quite impressive. So they are on the project. From there, we also hired an architect. The architect and the consultants have now put together I think it's around 166-page document that's required by the Mass School Buildings Authority, and it basically lays out what our educational plan is, what the current conditions are, and a myriad of different options for addressing those needs. And they include, renovation of the middle schools, combining of the middle schools, rebuilding of the middle schools, both on the Byrd site and on the Johnson site. And there's some interesting things coming out of that as far as the numbers, which, are somewhat surprising or interesting. And in fact, that, one of the issues currently is that the Byrd site is actually not an easy site to deal with, because there is an extreme change in height that you don't necessarily realize, but behind the school there is a significant drop off between the fields and the upper part of the project. And they've even looked at it. One of the sites looked at is behind the VFW site on Robbins Road. Unfortunately, I would ask that the website be a little more filled out with some of the slideshows that we got, so that the public can see those. I think there's been they've been a little lax at putting some of the information up there. But as you did say, tonight there was an open meeting. The big issue coming forward, and I think it's going to be resolved at the next school committee meeting, is whether or not the educational plan shall be to combine the populations, which would be a combined population of about 900, or continue with the current system, which has, about 450 in each of the two middle schools. That is going to be, although that's going to be a recommendation, it's not necessarily set in stone, but that is a big next step as far as what the school committee wants to do with that educational plan. What is being submitted to the school Massachusetts School Building Authority is this 166-page document that says, hey, we did some preliminary testing. We've decided that these are some of the options, and they are going to maybe tell us that some of those options aren't viable, give us some idea where to go forward. But none of those, and it's a very preliminary sketch. Even though there's pictures with, buildings on properties and drawings of, footprints on these properties, the final product may look nothing like this. This is very much a investigational stage. And one of the things they've done, and I won't go through the numbers, and hopefully they can get them on the website, is for each of these options, and there are some 15 of them, I think, there is a financial analysis of what that's going to cost, and also a discussion of expectations as what perhaps we may get in reimbursement. So certainly people are encouraged to take a look at that and make some assessments on their own as to those numbers. I hope I'll certainly be happy to update as we go to the next stage, and then maybe a January update would be appropriate at this time.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good to me, David. And from what I know of the timeline and what you just described, this sounds like a good idea. So thank you for that update and for taking part in that committee as well. Any questions or comments from other board members? Yes, Mark, please.
Yeah, just to add on, David, thanks for that update. To add on to what David said, a couple of people have asked me, how do you get to watch some of those meetings, like the meeting going on tonight? And if you go to Walpole Media Corp, you can go down and look at all of the presentations that have happened if you happen to be interested, but weren't available when they had that meeting. So just to keep people up to date. And I agree with David's comment that if some of the most recent presentations can be put on that website page, that'd be great. There are presentations there from as recently as a couple of weeks ago, but I think both of those two sources are good places to look for information if you're trying to stay up to date. So thanks again, David.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Jim Johnson, I know you're involved in this, very often as well. Do you have anything to add to that, or are you good at this point?
No, I just made a note to myself. I'll make sure we get some of those more recent items up there. I know they're holding another workshop tonight. And in the near future, I know the school committee is planning on coming to your board, I think in the next, 4 to 6 weeks, to request that your board endorsement of the project. That's a requirement of the MSBA. Whenever they narrow that down, last week they had 19 different options. They've narrowed it down to 11 preferred options. They got to narrow that down a lot more between now and coming to your board. So just something to keep in mind, probably sometime in January.
Great, perfect. All right, thank you. So, and thank you again, David, for the update, and we'll continue coordinating on that topic. Continuing down here, I would hear a motion on that consent agenda.
I will make a motion to accept the very generous donation of $3,000 from the Friends of St. Patrick to the Recreation Department Smiling Eye Scholarship.
I'll second that.
Ben, you're on mute.
Thank you, Jim.
You're fine.
Going on 3 hours here, so. There's another item on the consent agenda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the generous donation of $400 from Tyler Ferguson to the Veterans Gifts.
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye. And special shout out to Tyler. He's become a star star donator in town. He collects cans and sells videos that people donate, and has really become an example to all of us of what we can do to give back to our community.
Yeah, well said, David. Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Then I'm going to abstain because I'm a member of the Friends of St. Patrick Board.
Yep.
Well, also should be congratulated. Thank you, St. Patrick's.
And then aye, the motion passes 4-0-1. Excuse me, yeah. Moving on, we have the town administrator's update. Mr. Jim Johnson.
Sure. COVID update. At this time, there are 471 total confirmed cases in Walpole. 433 of those cases have completed monitoring and closed out. That leaves us with 38 active cases undergoing monitoring. Melissa, Tricia, Rika, and Jen down on the Board of Health continue to do a great job. Trish was such a good hire, and the timing was perfect. She's been tracking all these cases, working with the school department to make sure that we stay up to speed on everything. The school department's moving forward with having first graders, I think it's the week of the 14th, start 4 days a week. They're expanding into some of the gym areas. I know my wife is very happy with that because JJ will be back to school 4 days a week and at the Elm Street school. So I'm happy. I hope we're able to stay on this track with the way some of the numbers are going in the state, but I'm glad to see that we're at least going forward with it. And I know that the school department is ready to pivot and change course if necessary, but very quick notice. They've been working closely with the police and fire departments to make sure everybody's really on the same page with the Board of Health. And so more to come on that. And but just that's where we stand with COVID. Solid waste. You might recall last week, last meeting, I mentioned that Melissa and I are going to start working. We're about 1.5 years out, but we want to start working on the next contract early. We want to get a group together of board members from the Board of Health, the Select Board, Solid Waste Committee, probably Jody too, to start to look at some options. So I guess I'm looking for 1 to 2 members of the Select Board to let me know if you're interested in helping us out. I'd like buy-in from obviously the boards that are going to have an impact and a say on this contract as to what we do with the next one. So I'm not looking for someone now, but probably in the very near future. Let me know if you're interested in helping us out with that. The veterans agent, John Cogan, gave me notice last Friday that he's going to be retiring in December. I reached out to Medfield. As you may recall, we partnered with them a few years ago and had somewhat of a regional veterans agent. He worked in Medfield 1.5 days a week and here the rest of the week. And it worked out really well. I have a really good relationship with Christine over in Medfield, their TA. And she'd like to continue that partnership. It's a cost savings for the town. She mentioned Dover might be looking for something too. So I've reached out to their TA and I'm waiting to hear back. So we're going to go forward with the posting on that position and keep it more of a group approach with Medfield at least and maybe Dover. So more to come on that one. I'll keep your board updated, but obviously the person has to be a veteran. That's one of the major qualifications and get that paperwork processed. In the meantime, Kerry, Laurel, Debbie over in the COA have really stepped up by job medical leave and they've done an excellent job picking up and making sure that no veterans are really left behind with benefits or anything. So kudos to her and her team. Norfolk County Solar Project. There was a lot of people in on that meeting last week. I counted, I think it was 294 at one point for the proposed project up there. I did reach out to Mike Mullen a day or two ago and asked him about what the status. I specifically asked him are the commissioners going to proceed with all the negative feedback that was received, what the timeline was if they are going to proceed. Are they going to scale back the project at all? Are they going to explore any of the other sites that were mentioned? I remember hearing someone. And finally, I asked them if they reconsidered the position not to go to town meeting to request his own solar overlay district. Mike responded that they're still taking all the public comments into consideration and the oral and written feedback. So he didn't have any answer for me. He told me as soon as he had something, he'd let me know. More to come on that. I just wanted to let you know we are following up on it. Tree lighting, I wanted to let everyone know that due to the COVID situation everyone is dealing with, there won't be a tree lighting ceremony this year. But we are going to have the tree is going to be lit next this coming Saturday. The DPW, Highway, Parks, and Building Maintenance stepped up today. There was some last-minute efforts, and some people pulled out as far as helping out with, getting the lights transfixed and everything. But Rick, Don, Drew, Jimmy, Justin, all the guys pitched in, along with Paul Stas, Beth Pellick, Lindsay Rockwood, Harry was involved. So we're going forward with that, the tree lighting, just not a formal ceremony this year. And finally, town offices closed on Friday, day after Thanksgiving. And that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any with a show of hands or raised hand, we'll go around. Yes, Nancy.
I just wanted to also mention on that tree lighting, the reason, is following the order of the governor of gatherings over a certain amount, not just that we're canceling having it, there is a reason, and it does fall under guidelines. I also wanted to mention, Trish and Melissa, they've done such a great job. I wanted to agree. I wanted to say, Jim, though, that poor Trish might not think that it was such a perfect time for hiring for her. She might have liked
just her husband or her kids.
Right. But, a few years ago, this is something that we didn't have in our budget. We didn't have a public health nurse. And it started back with Robin, and it took us a few years and maybe a little arm twisting with you there, Jim, to get you to agree to hire a public health nurse. But it definitely happened at the right time. And, thank goodness, because we would have been in such a worse pickle if we hadn't had one. And then I wanted to build on, Dave, I know you had asked the chief about, any positive COVID cases, and I know it was 100% out of concern and caringness, and that's not why I'm bringing it up. But I do think that when we talk publicly about our police and fire, that knowing that they're being professional and they're doing what they should do and taking care of what they should be, as far as caring for their members that do or are or could become positive. But I think in the public setting, our employees have HIPAA, and I know nobody mentioned anybody's name, but also the public needs to feel safe that we shouldn't be putting it out there in this forum who and how many are or could be positive in our departments.
I disagree. I think the number is certainly an appropriate question.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else have a comment or question here for Jim? Yeah, Mark? Is that a hand raised?
No questions. I chat with Jim fairly frequently, so I'm good. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. Very good. Thank you, Jim. The only thing I wanted to add to what you had said, and I appreciate all that information, was keeping in continuous contact with Norfolk County and with Mike, and acknowledging that there's an appreciable amount of work that might come into this from our boards and from the town staff on that side. And so we really want them to communicate and be clear with us, and certainly with the residents, also with the town, on what they are going to do up there, when that's going to come down the pike. All of our boards, ZBA in particular, the planning board and staff in your office spend so much time with the 40Bs that are going on. So any permitting or any sort of other considerations that would come down from the county, they really need to let us know, as well as the final designs for residents and everything that was voiced the other night. So thank you for keeping tabs on that, and we'll look to be updated as soon as possible.
No problem.
And with that being said, Jim O'Neill.
Yeah, just one quick thing for potentially, actually for the next agenda, if we could, Ben. A friend of mine sent to me the program for the 200th bicentennial celebration of Walpole 100 years ago, or coming up on 100 years ago. We've got the 300th coming up. We had started doing some planning around that back in the pre-COVID timeframe, and I think we sort of got derailed on that. I'd like to bring that back around if we possibly could. And I'm not even sure, Jim Johnson, I'm not even sure where we got to in terms of the committee that we were talking about forming and all that. But
your timing is really great. Recently, we put it out on Twitter and I think a couple of the Facebook pages. Eva, how many interested people do we have?
We have 4 applications at present.
4 applications. So
yep.
We're starting to get them in. The Twitter advertisement really got some interest there. And Liz and I last week I asked her to pull the last 2, the 250 and the 275 town reports. So Eva and I have started to make a folder and start to get some ideas together. So I know it took a back burner, but someone recently mentioned it to me, so it's not on the back burner any longer.
Yeah, so maybe if we could just put it on.
Sorry, we'll likely just be asking for your board to appoint those 4 people on the committee since the first to put in for. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'd like to talk about, not now, but that's why I'd like to put it on the agenda is, starting to think about some funding. We had talked about over a period of years putting some money aside so we could actually support the celebration when the time comes. It's still a few years out. But if Ben, if we could just put it on the agenda for discussion next time, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
One last thing. Do you think the people that were on the 275th, if they're still in town, could we actually send like a little invitation?
Yeah, we can do that. We just started the file, so we have it in the office, no problem, if they're still around.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Jim. Being that there's no further business, I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, proceed with the roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. 5-0-0. The motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks. Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.